Hello and welcome to the pestle analysis of Norway by students from the University of Texas at Tyler. In this video, we will be covering the following variables: political, economical, socio-cultural, technological, environmental, legal, and concluding with a SWOT analysis of Norway. Traveling from Tyler, Texas, we would be traveling 4,817 miles to reach Norway's capital of Oslo. The land area of Norway is 226,952 square miles, which is 40,000 square miles smaller than Texas. Norway shares borders with Sweden, Finland, and Russia. The population of Norway was 5,195,000 in 2015, compared to the U.S. with a population of 321,400,000 in 2015. Norway has a slightly higher percentage of men compared to women in the overall population, with similar age distributions between genders. We are now going to discuss the political variables of Norway. Politics in Norway take place in the framework of a parliamentary, representative, democratic constitutional monarchy. Executive power is exercised by the King's Council, the cabinet, led by the Prime Minister of Norway. Legislative power is vested in both the government and the Storting, elected within a multi-party system. The judiciary is independent of the executive branch and the legislature. According to the Freedom House Index, Norway's freedom status is free, with an aggregate score of 100 out of a possible 100. The freedom rating is 1, the political rights score was a 1, and the civil liberties score was a 1 in 2017. Compared to the United States, Norway has a higher aggregate freedom score, as the United States scores an 89 out of 100. Like Norway, the U.S. scored a 1 in both civil liberties and political rights. Now looking at the corruption perception index of Norway and the United States, again we see that Norway has scored higher than the United States. Norway currently ranks as the 6th cleanest country, while the United States is 18th out of the 168 countries scored through this index. According to the World Bank Index measuring a country's rule of law, Norway has maintained a consistent and strong rule of law, coming close to having the highest possible score of 2.5. With Norway's high score in rule of law, people have confidence in and abide by the rules of society, and in particular the quality of contract enforcement, property rights, the police, and the courts, as well as the likelihood of crime and violence. This concludes this section, and we will now be moving on to the economical section.
From here, let's move on to the economic analysis of Norway. We'll start first by discussing the GDP. The first graph will show Norway's GDP as it relates to US dollars. On the graph, Norway's numerical data is shown in the billions, while the US has numerical data in the trillions. As you can see, one of the higher GDP values for Norway was in the year 2008 at a value of 461.9 million, although the US had a value of 14.7 billion. Norway has continued to rise and only fall gradually within this category. As seen in the previous graph, the GDP values of Norway and the US differ quite a bit. Yet when compared to the GDP per capita PPP, the numbers are somewhat closer in relation. For example, in the year 2001, the US had $37,273.62, while Norway had $37,873.58. Let's now move toward unemployment within Norway. Some may feel this graph shows low numbers in comparison to the US, but there are countries with worse evaluations. Norway has seen its unemployment rate soar since the year 2014 and is projected to continue on this path. Next, we have Norway's yearly inflows and outflows within these next two graphs. When compared to the US, Norway has stayed steady from the year 2000, plummeting in the year 2013, but picking back up since that year. Yet Norway's outflows have remained stable amidst the country's fluctuation with inflows. Norway's inflation rates are seen here. When compared to the US, Norway can be seen as not falling as low in the graph as the US. By further evaluating this graph, you can see that Norway's rates are slowly on the rise. These next four graphs show the top 10 imports and exports in the year 2000 and 2015. As far as the exports are concerned, in the year 2000, the top export was fuels. This export generated a total of $38.3 million for Norway, but in the year 2015, fuels almost doubled this amount at $60.5 million. Norway will always have fuels as a number one export due to Norway being one of the world's largest petroleum exporters. In regards to imports, however, Norway's top would be machines and electrical equipment, with a total of $8.2 million in the year 2000 and $17.8 million in the year 2015. Now we will move our attention to Norway's exchange rate in comparison to both Japan and the US. Norway has remained low in regards to exchange rates. Japan has risen over time while also remaining higher than both Norway and the US. Lastly, we come to the last graph within the economical analysis of Norway. Norway is considered to be a country with a mixed economy, with an economic freedom score of 70.8 in the year 2016. It is also seen as having a mostly free economic system.
Let's move on to the socio-cultural aspects of Norway. Norwegian is the official language of Norway. Although most people in Norway are fluent in English, English is considered an important primary language and is taught in grade school. Norway spends 6.6% of their GDP on education, compared to the USA, 5.2%. Looking at the PISA test results, we can see that Norway's students score higher than those in the US for all categories. Over time, Norwegian students have ranked higher than the US students, since surpassing them in 2010, and continue to excel. While U.S. students' results continue to trend down, further widening the gap in youth education between the U.S. and Norway. Looking at the Hofstede's dimension model, we can see that the U.S. and Norway are similarly ranked for most categories, except for two: individualism and masculinity. Norway scores about 20 points lower than the U.S. for individualism. The employer-employee relationship is based on a contract, and leaders focus on management of individuals. Feedback is direct, and nepotism is not encouraged. Unlike the U.S., Norway is highly feminine. They score an 8 for masculinity. This places them as the second most feminine society. Taking care of the environment is important. Trying to be better than others is neither socially nor materially rewarded. Societal solidarity is important. Focuses on well-being and status is not shown. Norway has a highly religious society, with 93% of the population believing in a higher being. Evangelical Lutheran is the official language of Norway, with 83% of the people practicing.
I would now like to discuss some of the technological aspects of Norway. Norway spends more than $50 billion annually on research and development, with almost 70,000 persons estimated as involved with R&D. The Norwegian Innovation Survey estimates that Norway spends $60 billion on innovation. I would like to further discuss this spending by going over the research and development expenditure per GDP. Both the US and Norway GDP expenditures have been relatively steady over the past years. The US has spent more towards R&D with 2.7% compared to 1.7% by Norway. When comparing patents per year, the US is by far and away leading Norway. The US had 285,000 patents in 2014, where Norway had only 1,106. Norwegian publishings are cited above the world average in most disciplines. The top levels of citation are found for political science and clinical medicine. Traditional research universities account for nearly half of the national scientific publications for 2014. The largest proportions of publications came from the University of Oslo, with 17.9%. One of the most important technological advances to come out of Norway in years is dynamic positioning. Dynamic positioning is a computer-controlled system that allows ships to maintain their position regardless of wind, waves, and currents. This technology makes it possible for drill ships and supply vessels to stand completely still during their operations. This equipment is vital for tasks that need to be performed 200 meters below the surface of the water. This invention was thought up in America, but developed by a company, Kongsberg, in Norway. Kongsberg is now the leading producer of this technology. Dynamic positioning has been vital to the success of the Norwegian oil industry, contributing to Norway's petroleum fairy tale. I will now continue by discussing the environmental aspects of Norway. Norway comprises the western part of the Scandinavian peninsula. Its borders are shared with Sweden, Finland, and Russia. Norway has a long, rugged coastline that stretches 2,500 kilometers. Norway is also a mountainous country with many glaciers and some of the highest waterfalls in the world. The Environmental Performance Index ranks Norway 17th overall, which is higher than the US, which ranked 26th. Although Norway's country ranking dropped from 10th to 17th since 2014, its overall EPI score increased from 78.04 to 86.9. This suggests that many countries all over the world are improving their overall EPI score. Air quality in Norway has generally improved since the 1990s. However, many people in larger towns are still affected by local air pollution. Although newer cars pollute less, the volume of traffic has been growing. Road traffic is the most important source of air pollution. Norway still, however, ranks 12th out of 180 countries on the Environmental Performance Index when pertaining to air quality. Norway's rivers and lakes provide a rich and varied freshwater environment, under less pressure from human activity than many other countries in Europe. Challenges do still remain as many rivers and lakes are affected by pollution, urbanization, and hydropower regulation. However, conditions in most Norwegian rivers and lakes are good when compared to other European countries. 60% of Norway's rivers or lakes have good or high ecological statuses, ranking them 24th out of 180 countries on the Environmental Performance Index. This concludes my analysis of the technological and environmental aspects of Norway.
Norway's government type is of a parliamentary constitutional monarchy, which consists of 19 counties. It has gained its independence on 7 June 1905 when it declared the union with Sweden be dissolved. On 26 October 1905, Sweden agreed to the repeal of the Union. King Harald V is the current king of Norway, a constitutional monarchy. Norway divides state power between the parliament, the cabinet, and the Supreme Court, as determined by the 1814 Constitution. Norway's legal system is of a mixed legal system of civil, common, and customary law where the Supreme Court can advise on legislative acts. It is divided into the Chief of State currently held by King Harald V. Head of government is held by Prime Minister Erna Solberg. Cabinet, which consists of State Council appointed by the monarch and approved by the Parliament. Norway maintains close ties with the European Union and the United States. It is one of the founding members of the United Nations, NATO, and the Council of Europe, to name a few. The World Justice Project Rule of Law Index for 2016 gave Norway 0.88 out of 1, the highest score received worldwide. It is rated 2 out of 113 in global rank and 2 out of 36 in income rank. Norway scored particularly high in its effective enforcement of regulations, ranking second worldwide. Norway also scored second worldwide for absence of corruption, civil justice, and open government.
SWOT analysis. A few of Norway's strengths include their high trade freedom ranking and their coastal border. Having a coastal border gives Norway an advantage over landlocked countries, allowing for a better flow of trade and access to natural resources found off the coast. Weaknesses. Norway's GNI per capita at PPP have been trending down and are projected to continue in that direction throughout 2014. Norway's fish exports have also been trending down, indicating a loss in power in a growing market. Opportunities. Norway has the resources to explore renewable energy options such as wind power. Threats. Saudi Arabia possesses about 16% of the world's proven petroleum reserves and ranks as the largest exporter of petroleum, making them a threat to Norway, whose leading source of revenue comes from petroleum exports.
We hope you enjoyed your tour of Norway and look forward to doing business with you soon.